Before we start, I'd like to take a few moments to thank those that made this special event that it is. There are many great debate tournaments during the year. There's only one Barkley Forum for high schools. The celebration of the coaches, the unique traditions, whether being judged by professors to being invited to participate in the next tutorial, is all the things that make this tournament so special. Thank you to the members of the Barkley Forum, the Barkley Forum Foundation, and all the Emory debaters for all your work behind the scenes to keep this tournament running in such an efficient manner. We know this while running ballots and cleaning rooms are not glamorous. It's attention to detail like that keep all of us coming back year after year. Thank you to Melissa Wade and Bill Newnham for their tireless dedication to the high school community. A special thank you to Professors Cruz, Hahn, and Boyd for a valuable tutorial. We appreciate your time, and I hope to live up to those that have preceded me. I'd also like to thank my coaches, Mr. Aaron Timmons, Jake Nebel, and Neil Conrad, as well as my teammate Rebecca Pong for all the support they've given me in the past couple of weeks preparing for this tournament. Given all the controversy over the last month or so regarding whether or not the topic of domestic violence was possible to debate due to its effect on the community, it is truly an honor to get to discuss this issue in such an austere setting. The Dale Lauder McCall tutorial, far too long has the issue been silenced. My hope is that as individuals and as a community, we can truly recognize the horrors of abuse and generate empathy, and perhaps a real plan of action in moving forward. Now I'll be starting the affirmative case. Because deadly force meets the practical standard for self-defense for victims of domestic violence, I affirm. Permissibility is a deontic normative status along with obligation and impermissibility, according to McNamara and the SP entry of deontic logic. Something is permissible if only its negation is not obligatory, and impermissible if only its negation is obligatory. So, our burdens are mutually exclusive and exhaustive. The neg must prove a categorical prohibition on the use of deadly force. Two warrants. A, prohibitions are default categorical because there's no non-arbitrary basis to prohibit some actions of the same act type and allow others. B, permissibility is the default assumption. Caleb. When it comes to justifying this, to what can one refer by way of justification other than the fact that it doesn't harm anyone, which seems tantamount to saying that it's permissible because the burden of proof has been met. The standard or value criterion is the practical abuse self-defense defined by Fro. It strikes me as a mistake to build an account of permissible defense around knowledge that the victim cannot have. How can these accounts tell a victim what he's permitted to do when he has less than perfect knowledge? In the circumstance in which defense arises, victim will always have less than perfect knowledge. How can they play any real role in telling victim what he's permitted to do in self-defense? These cases of full knowledge are artificial, and the assumption on which they rely will always be false. Victim can have a reason to believe about those facts, he can predict the way in which events will unfold, but that one's prediction turns out to be true does not equate to the claim that one knew was going to happen. Negative arguments why the act must meet proportionality and imminence requirements are not offense under my standard because A, the practical view does not require us to assess that. As a victim deliberating, a reason to believe that your life is in danger is sufficient. B, raising the epistemic bar any higher makes self-defense impossible to live by and violates the practicality principle. Fro 2 explains. What it is reasonable to expect a person to find out before performing an action must fall within the limits of what is possible for her to find out compatible with performing that action. Raising the epistemic bar any higher will generate an impossibility of self-defense, since meeting the standard will preclude meeting the necessity condition. But merely reading alternative evidence is not sufficient to link to the standard. They must read evidence that the victim knows that he or she can go to alternative, and the victim knows that these things are successful. The negative burdens prove that it's unreasonable for the victim to think that their life is in danger. Prefer the practical view self-defense for 4 reasons. A, the victim is reasonable to believe that deadly force is necessary and is consistent with human equality. Arthur Ripstein explains. Reasonableness is tied to the idea of equality. The reasonableness standard provides a like liberty for all compatible with the fundamental interests and the security of those things that are essential to protecting and exercising one's capacity for freedom. Legal systems that protect life and property are best thought of seeking to treat individuals as equals and allowing the same liberty and security for all. B, every ethical theory agrees. There's no moral theory for which self-defense is impermissible. Kaufman 2 explains. Both major schools of moral philosophy, deontology and consequentialism, have usually ignored self-defense altogether, as have other schools of ethics, taking it so obviously justified that they need not attempt to explain why it is. C, everyone agrees that killing self-defense is permissible. Kaufman explains. Self-defense is universally accepted as a paradigm of the permissiveness of deadly force. The unanimous consensus of the permissibility of killing in self-defense is self-remarkable, given that every other category of killing arouses intense moral and political controversy. Self-defense is the one striking exception to the controversy over killing, but there have been no serious challenges to its legitimacy. Even pacifists have not questioned the legitimacy of personal self-defense. Self-defense is the one case where killing is taken as not only uncontroversial, but positively morally justified and indeed celebrated. The fact that everyone agrees to it means you should accept it because it's intuitive. We ought to give concrete intuitions more credence than abstract moral theories. Jeff McMahon explains, if a moral theory could command our allegiance by powerful means of persuasion, we might yield our intuitions to it. But no moral theory can have anything like the authority or degree of validation the best supported scientific theories have. We are at present deeply uncertain even about what types of consideration count as to justify moral theory. So when intuition comes into conflict with moral theory, which can have nothing approaching the authority of a well-grounded scientific theory, we should be profoundly reluctant to abandon intuition debating the theory. We can be reasonably confident that none of the moral theories presently on offer is sufficient credential to make it rationally required that we accept or turn our intuition. D. Morality must guide deliberation, as it tells the victim what is permitted to do in the circumstance of the decision. This is necessary because morality is about the rightness and wrongness of choices. It doesn't apply to inanimate objects and tornadoes because they don't have to make morally significant choices. So, morality has to guide deliberation. Killing self-defense is therefore permissible if the agent reasonably believes that killing is the only option and the only reasonable result of deliberation is deadly force. My advocate is reason for victims to repeat domestic violence to believe that deadly force is necessary for self-preservation. First, victims can't rely on legal avenues. Victims. The problem with institutions homophobia and heterosexism. The police say they can't tell the abusers despite often clear physical evidence of injury. Police take the attitude that two men duking it out is not domestic violence, it's two men fighting. They do not treat the matter seriously because their relationship is homosexual and try to mimic the violence. The police treat gay and lesbian domestic violence as mutual fighting and conflict parties rather than endure the safety of the abused party. Second, even if police treatment improved, the court system remains unjust. Karen Hodge explains. Lesbian battered women receive protection from courts as being victims of the homophobia that affect the legal system. One of the most dangerous examples exists in states with sodomy laws criminalizing homosexual sexual activity. Lesbian battered women come forward and put in the difficult position of first admitting to criminal acts in order to prove that they are in fact victims of domestic violence. Even when states no longer enforce their sodomy statutes, the laws often remain on the boasted value of hostile environment courts. Third, deadly force is necessary to avoid retaliation. Ideals. Death may be necessary because the lesser degrees of force may be insufficient. The battered woman may not be able to confront the batterer without deadly weapons that disparities in size, strength, or emotional control. The lower degrees of force woman typically exerts upon a man may have little or no impact on the physically stronger abuser. A woman's lesser degree of force may only incite a vicious retaliation by the abuser. Also, the negative might object to intuitions and say that it's unreliable. But that's incorrect. One, I defend a form of revisionary intuitionism. This dealings their objection about reliability because we should just revise our moral theories to make them more valuable. Second, this will put him in a double bind. Either A, intuitions are unreliable because they can't be verified, but neither can our mental states. That would commit him to some form of radical skepticism. Or B, he doesn't defend that form of radical skepticism, which means their objection is not unique and you accept intuitions. He might say that not everyone agrees on this intuition. But that's incorrect, because just as we can't persuade someone who is colorblind that red looks more like orange than it looks like blue, doesn't mean their intuition is suspect. Just means you are dealing with an anomaly. He might say intuition is subjective. But one, it's not unique. This is true of all kinds of beliefs. Justification for perceptual beliefs depends upon one's perceptual experiences. Justification of beliefs depends upon one's memories. Thus I affirm.
Okay, so whose intuitions do we look to?
It's not a question of whose intuitions, it's a question of everyone agrees that self-defense is an intuitive belief, right? It's a non-inferentially justified belief. That's what the literature uses, right?
So you just assert that everyone says that it's okay to kill in the context of resolution.
It's not an assertion, right? The evidence I'm reading on this question, the Kaufman evidence,
Some people disagree, right?
Well, yeah, I agree. Not everyone's going to agree on every intuition, but that's why I made an argument at the end of my speech that just as we can't persuade someone who's colorblind that red looks more like orange than it looks like blue, doesn't mean their intuition is suspect.
Colorblindness is based on the idea that everyone in the world actually perceives colors in a certain way, right? So do you have empirical evidence that holds that show that people in the real world actually believe that self-defense is always permissible?
Well, within that same analogy, with respect to intuitions, we all agree about certain moral facts, right? We agree that genocide is wrong. We agree that slavery is wrong. Given that there are certain moral facts that exist and we agree that certain things are right and wrong, that will lend us credence to the idea that certain intuitions are correct and certain are incorrect.
Different cultures have different interpretations of what is intuitive. If you're saying
Can you give me an example? Like a particular example?
I mean, there are lots of examples of cultural traditions that are horrific. Like, you know.
Yeah, sure. The Aztecs agree that we should sacrifice to the gods. That doesn't mean that's morally permissible.
What?
Just because the Aztecs, for example, agree that we should sacrifice people to the gods, it doesn't follow from that empirical moral disagreement example that our intuitions are suspect, but that moral facts are.
They believe that they are intuitively correct. So my
argument is that they are wrong.
Why? Yeah. So why can't we question? If we can't question our intuitions, then how do we know if we aren't the Aztecs as opposed to, you know, the correct?
Right. Well, I mean, I think your question already assumes that we can't change our intuitions, right? My argument is that I defend a form of revisionary intuitionism that says that we should try to continuously revise what our intuitions are to make them more reliable.
How do I turn the AC contention?
You turn the affirmative contention by showing how it's an unreasonable belief for victims to believe that their life is in danger.
It is.
Right, that's the burden analysis at the beginning of the contention.
Define reasonable.
That's defined by the Fro evidence. The argument is that it's inevitable that the victim will have less than perfect knowledge when they're assessing a situation about whether they should respond or not.
So if I prove an alternative that solves, then we can reasonably say that their lives are not in danger.
I mean, I think my argument would be that, sure, there's certain other things we can do. Killing should never be the first option. We should use shelters, we should do other things, but I don't think that's answering the fundamental question of resolution as to whether deadly force is more permissible.
So the order will be NC, then a counterplan, then on-case. Is that right? Whenever we consider taking an action, we must consider whether that action is good, but that question requires a meta-standard to tell us what qualities the standard for right conduct should possess. Thus, the ultimate meta-standard is practical rationality, because any objection to it presupposes the validity of it. This is going to preclude all the analysis in the affirmative case about intuitionism, because the fundamental problem with intuitionism is that we can always question our intuitions. The one thing we cannot question is the force of reason itself. And we are rationally obligated to required to respect autonomy of others, because our respect for autonomy is implicit in every choice we make, Korsgaard explains. Regarding your existence as a rational being as an end in itself is a subjective principle of human action. We must regard ourselves as capable of conferring value upon the opposite of our choice because we must regard our ends as good. But since every other rational being thinks that his existence is on the same rational ground which holds also for myself, we must regard others as capable of conferring value by reason of their rational choices, and so also as ends themselves. Thus, you negate the resolution because any violation of autonomy is always impermissible, including that when you affirm the resolution, you are always using deadly force, using them as a means to an end, and violating the autonomy of the aggressor. He's going to try to cross-apply the arguments in the affirmative case about self-defense, but that's not going to be applicable first because it's impossible to forfeit your own agency, because agency is a descriptive fact about life that you have agency. You can't surrender your body. And second, because two wrongs don't make a right. The violation that occurs in domestic abuse is intent. You can't stop that violation by creating another wrong. Instead, that just creates two wrongs. Counter. A is the text. Governments will make it punishable for mandated reporters such as doctors to ignore signs of domestic violence, and governments will enforce restraining orders by forcing the victim in the abuse to wear ankle monitors. The competition. The counterplan is mutually exclusive because first, the use of deadly force is morally permissible if it's a last resort. The existence of the alternative makes deadly force prohibited. Second, deadly force could not be used in conjunction with the counterplan because of the restraining order. The victim would not get a chance to use deadly force at all. And third, ankle bracelets are mandatory. Reporting cannot be used in conjunction with deadly force. Since if the abuser is dead, then there's no longer any use to report, nor anyone to put the bracelet on. And fourth, the counterplan can be through net benefits and two courses of action at the same end, but one of the two actions is preferable for any reason. Taking the other course of action would incur unnecessary and arbitrary harm, which is not permissible under any ethical theory. C is solvency. Mandatory reporting of domestic abuse by health professionals does not discourage battered women from seeking help, rather than help overcome barriers in seeking help. This is empirically supported in Colorado, Howery explains. Out of patients who generally wear mandatory reporting laws, 88 state and Colorado mandatory reporting law would not deter them from seeking care for their injuries. Possible reasons include shifting responsibility to the physician making diagnosis referrals and overcoming the victim's barriers of shame and learned helplessness as well as conflicted loyalties. This is going to take out the analysis of the AC about why I need to show that the victim is aware of the alternative and wants to take advantage of it because I have empirical evidence showing that victims do. And mandatory reporting can help us secure restraining orders from victims, Sachs explains. Reporting laws can increase detection and documentation of abuse and aid appropriately reporting victims and ensure perpetrator investigation. Police reporting reinforces domestic violence as a crime and may increase victim safety by providing immediate access to restraining orders and swift perpetrator arrests. Once victims receive a restraining order, ankle bracelets can help protect the rights of the victim and the abuser, Linger explains. The most effective means of monitoring is to affix transmitter bracelets to the ankles of both the batterer and the victim, allowing remote monitoring to determine if the two ever close to the minimum distance. Such a measure enhances safety. The protocols would improve the safety of the battered woman, but also provide substantively more tools to defend themselves and require officers to attend to the concerns of the victim who may lack resources to vindicate the rights of the left their own devices. In fact, they can be very effective tools at stopping domestic violence. This is empirically proven in Brooklyn, New York. Person more. Probation officers in Brooklyn are using electronic bracelets to monitor the whereabouts of domestic violence offenders and sound immediate alarm if an offender violates probation. Under the program, a domestic violence offender wearing one of the bracelets approaches within 500 feet of the victim's home. A signal device attached to the victim's telephone will sound alarm and immediately notify them to monitoring company. Thus, the counterplan is able to solve domestic violence. Next, net benefits. All people are inherently entitled. This solves back all the problems with self-defense in the straight term of the affirmative case, because the only reason why we want self-defense to begin with is because it's a fundamental right to protect ourselves. If I can protect ourselves without incurring arbitrary and unnecessary harm of having to kill someone, then you would always prefer the counterplan. These net benefits. All people are inherently entitled to due process because their agency, as per the negative framework, entitles everyone to due process rights. Brennan explains. Our time has known the tragedy of suffering countless human beings over the face of the globe, deprived of liberty without accusation, without trial upon, but the arbitrary fiat of government, of sovereign government, and to helpless to challenge the convention of world form. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights reads that no one shall be subject to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile, but this is empty rhetoric until implemented by some sort of international structured procedure by enforcing compliance by offended signatory state without great principles and guarantees. The implication is that this is going to have a net benefit both the NC, because I'm respecting the agency to due process, and also the AC, because the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the most universally accepted intuitive principle of moral force, says that everyone has a right to due process, and the counterplan would be preferable since deadly force allows abusers the right to due process. And domestic violence is incredibly costly. And never mind. Due process. Affirmative case. On the affirmative basis. Okay. First, actually, on the top analysis. He says that I need to prove categorical prohibition, but first I would say that the affirm means to uphold the resolution, so he needs to affirm the entirety of the resolution. There are no linguistic caveats in the resolution, and language has a caveat, such as in the case of, in order to indicate when we don't want to affirm the resolution in its entirety, so he needs to prove the entirety of the resolution true. And second, I would say it destroys equitable distribution of ground if he can just choose the best part of the resolution to uphold. And third, I would say that we default in the case of killing, that we prohibit that killing, because killing is such a horrible thing, so that means in the context of the resolution you default to negation. The implication is that you can't affirm off the AC, because the AC is only as offense coming from LGBT victims, not victims as a whole. That's coming from the Vickers analysis. Then, on the framework itself. The Ripstein analysis is not going to be linked in the negative case, because first, you can't have your obligation to yourself to justify a violation of other people's autonomy, because your own autonomy obligates you to respect autonomy as a general principle. It's not, you don't value your autonomy because it is yours, you value it because autonomy gives you the ability to generate actions. And second of all, you can't have an obligation to yourself because that destroys the notion of autonomy to begin with, because that you choose how you want to have your actions, take your actions. Then, on the Kaufman analysis, this is just, the Kaufman and McMahon analysis are not actually justification, or don't have an external justification for intuitions. That means they're entirely circular, because they're trying to justify intuitionism with intuitions. And second of all, this is also going to be entirely circular, because the only reason why we hold intuitions is because other people hold them. The only reason why other people can hold our intuitions is because we hold them, because we base intuitions on justified or not based on agreement, meaning the definition of circularity, because no one is justified unless everyone else is as well. Then the last argument says morality must guide action, but the NC guides action too, because it just tells us what to do. And second of all, I have a counterplan, so it's not going to be applicable. The counterplan is going to be solving 100% for the Vickers and the Hodge analysis, because all that analysis is not specific to one. I'm providing empirical examples of when the counterplan is implemented in Brooklyn, Colorado, and to solve problems.
What's your advocacy?
It's the counterplan text.
Okay, so let's talk about the NC though. The argument is that we can never violate autonomy. So are you saying that in a world where women and LGBT victims are being hurt by domestic violence, that they should do nothing to respond to it?
Well, I'm saying, of course not. I have a counterplan.
Right, but I'm saying independent of the counterplan. If you lose the counterplan, you can win on the NC, right? NC generates offense for you. I'm saying independent of the counterplan.
I'm saying that the counterplan is a viable alternative.
Okay, so you can't win on the NC by itself.
Well, the NC says that affirming is immoral, so the resolution would still be false.
Right, so affirming is immoral. So you're saying that it's immoral for victims of repeated domestic violence to do nothing, to respond, basically? That they should do nothing? And
well, I mean, I'm saying that it's immoral to kill the person. It's like you're saying that the viability of alternatives is not viable. Okay. But it's still possible to attempt them, right?
Okay, so you're saying
that killing is always immoral.
Excellent. So
the abuser is wrong in.
Okay. So your argument is that we must look to practical rationality. What about infants and the irreversibly comatose? What about people who never had the capacity to be rational? What does your framework allow them to do?
So Korsgaard distinguishes between someone who is beings that are actually rational, such as animals, and beings that that still have the capacity
Alright,
for
so
developing
what about the
rationale, such as
irreversibly
infants.
comatose? They don't have the capacity, they never did, they would never have it.
According to Scarsdale, they are still, we value the humanity within ourselves. And so they
So
had
it's
the
an indirect duty
potentiality
towards them, it's not a direct duty? Right, it seems like why is it a direct duty?
Why would, of course it would be. They have the potentiality for, the autonomous actions they take, just as infants do.
Okay. Alright, so let's talk about this counterplan. What's the status of the counterplan?
Disposition.
Okay, what are the conditions of it?
Straight term.
So if I straight turn it, you can kick out of the argument?
No.
If I straight turn it, you have to stick with it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Alright, so let's talk about the counterplan text. It's governments, right? So it's a different agent than the affirmative, looks like? You're saying some other actor should do it, is that correct? And you say government, so is that every government in the world? That's what the text says. It says government, so multi-actor, like every government in the world? Because
whatever you have analysis specifying in the affirmative.
There's no analysis in the app about governments.
Well, yeah, but your empirical analysis is talking about the U.S. So since you didn't specify.
We're good on that point. Let's talk about the particularities of the evidence. How does providing restraining orders take into account LGBT victims? Right? Are you reading any evidence that indicates that these restraining orders will be effective for that unique subset of the population?
I'm just saying that they would be effective in general.
Okay.
If you have counter evidence, then just do it.
Do you mind if I take a look at that during the stage prep? Is that right? Often NC1 reject practical rationality. People who are irreversibly comatose and infants don't have rationality, don't have the capacity if the former course doesn't speak to them, so no more why they would be protected. The impact is that it could be the case that they could be tortured for fun, which means that his theory is clearly absurd. Two, he's conceding that moral uncertainty exists in status quo. A points moral epistemology can never be 100% confident. Any ethical claim made, armchair philosophy can always go wrong. B points conceptual analysis. The only thing that have unjustifiably high credences are interpretational issues like definitions. The fact that we have disagreements about those means that more argumentative arguments have even more disagreements. C step one is peer disagreement. The fact that you and I disagree is the reason why there is moral uncertainty, which is the reason why you prefer case-specific intuitions over general moral theories. Three is conceding the B point under my study that every degree self-defense is intuitive. This is conceded. More which shows that even Deontology, like his theory would agree that self-defense is a more which is the my argument sort of turns in his position now off the intention level. First, chart agency can be valid. One person causes harm to another person, for example. So they lose their right to agency. There's no internal warrant why they still have a right to their agency. But two, you can turn it. You can turn the contention. You can turn the contention level again. It may be contrary to will or wrong, but it's not contrary to will or wrong against the wrong. Con. If a certain superior itself and hinders superior in accordance with universal law, coercion as opposed to this is considered the three in accordance with universal law, hence is connected with right by the principle of counter contradiction and opposition course of infringement. The implication of evidence is that it may be wrong to validate equality and agency, but it's not wrong to validate equality and agency to beat back another violation. Now off the counterclaim. First, solvency deficit, his argument excludes people of different sexual orientation caused by the bigger sense being conceded. In the case made that there's institutional homophobia, and police can't tell the abusers means that his evidence already excludes LGBT. Two, permutation as indicated across the compound doesn't answer the fundamental question of the resolution whether deadly force more will be to try to do everything that is necessary when it fails, but we should do deadly force. Three, too little, too late. There is no analysis why I can't defend it as the last resort. That is my advocacy is for functional problem holden to the types of advocacy all governments in the world. Clearly that's impossible, which means this counterplay doesn't solve. Five, you must be counterplay on condition, reject the debater. Ace point, it destroys optimal decision-making skills, a decrease in incentive to clash. If I don't straight turn, you can kick the argument, which is the reason, which is a voting issue. Six, you can turn it, or you can turn it. I don't have time. I forgot to show the timer. Can I see the timer? Thanks. Alright, you can turn the contention arrest for misdemeanors online with a caveat. A prerequisite for an arrest for any misdemeanors that the act would occur in the presence of a police officer or that a complaint be sworn by the victim, the district attorney, the office of prosecution of crimes has been hampered by the improbability of the police presence at a meeting, by the widespread reprisal, or by her lack of knowledge of the availability of these statutory remedies. Also, turn it again, felony charges do not work whatsoever. Caveat. The felony charge may also have a death penalty effect on the family as much as financial problems result from higher bail and longer periods in prison will in cases and impose more serious hardship than the misdemeanor charge discussed above. Furthermore, the husband may be more willing to contest the felony charge by exacerbating an already strained and violent marital relationship. Also, turn again, restraining orders will never work. Caveat. Procedures that must be followed, obtained and enforced as orders that cumbersome and effective the retention of attorney, the expense of billing fees and costs and time-consuming petition periods and contempt which may make up more time and money for the wife and afford. In addition, the husband may be incited to further abuse his wife through the entire process of proceeding the issuance of a contempt citation restraining order. Now go to the affirmative case.
Starting at the top, I will concede that lip syncs are relevant. He's conceding the B point that every other theory agrees. No more different self-defense is impermissible. This is an independent war of intuition, meaning that your framework, even the NC, agrees that self-defense is important. Also, he must go for the NC next because the only net benefit to the counterplay is is not an offensive reason to vote unless there's a disadvantage to using deadly force, which is the negative case, meaning that he has to go for that. Instead of the C point, that morality must guide deliberation. Only the affirmative framework does it with the throw evidence, and that it's never the victim of less than perfect knowledge situation. The only question is, what do they do when the attacker is attacking them under his negative case? Is that we would do nothing in that part 2 situation. Counterplay can never solve in this instance, and that's part 2 instance, which is the you. But that means that missing morality must guide action. Only my framework can solve for that. He said the NC guides action. No, it doesn't. It is not allowed for self-defense. Now going to contention. I've already sent the victor's address so that there's no legal avenues and there's institutionalized harm. Also, you can send the second argument, which is the solvency test of the counterplay. The court system is unjust, and there is no incentive to do anything with the police or the legal system because they know that they're going to be discriminated against. So this round becomes very clear. I'm winning. He's conceding too many arguments in the affirmative contention that sort of solvency test of the counterplay on the way and on the framework debate and on the NC.
In a minute.
We extend the practical rationality meta-ethic, then, and we can always question why we ought to act a certain way, but the one thing that we can't question is the moral force of reason themselves, because to ask the question why is asking for a reason to act in a certain way. The implication is that the meta-ethical standard for the round is practical rationality. That is where we derive reason and value for the round. That is the source of morality. This is going to preclude this ethics and moral uncertainty argument, because the moral uncertainty argument is grounded in an idea of intuitions and epistemology, which is precluded by practical rationality. Because practical rationality says that we derive what is true based on pure reason itself. This is also going to preclude his third argument, which is a cross-application of the AC, which is talking about how all ethical theories agree. Most people intuitively agree. It's not actually saying that deontology agrees. He needs to give an argument as to why my framework says that you would affirm the resolution. That would be a term, but he's not giving the arguments. Then it's also going to take out the first argument, because the first argument is just an appeal, again, just an appeal to intuitions that we can always question. But you didn't come by that. On the first argument about infants, like infants still have the potentiality for creating rationality. That means that they're still going to be protected under the Coast Guard system. People like animals who don't have the potential at all for rationality are not going to be protected. Second of all, I would say that insofar as we value our autonomy, the reason why we value our autonomy is that whenever we express our autonomy, we are forced to value it within ourselves. But we are also forced to endorse our own humanity, because that's the only thing that stands behind our ability to use our autonomy. So that means that all humans, infants, or and the mentally handicapped will always be protected under Coast Guard system, Coast Guard's interpretation of deontology. Then the next argument of moral uncertainty is not going to be applicable because he never says why we're uncertain about the NC being true. There needs to be mitigation on the NC. Otherwise, for the purpose of a debate round, if I win an argument, the argument is certainly true. Then the third argument is cross-application of the AAC, which I've already taken. On the contention. His first response is a term which I preempted. I said that he's going to try to say that they forfeit their right, or that it's okay to kill someone in certain instances, but that's never okay. The first reason why it's never okay is that it's impossible to forfeit your autonomy. Your autonomy is absolute. This is because the Coast Guard's interpretation of deontology is that we have agency as a matter of fact, a descriptive fact about the world. We have the ability to use our bodies however we wish. That means it's impossible to forfeit your autonomy because you can't get rid of your own mind and your body. That means it's an absolute right. This is a descriptive right. That means that killing is always impermissible no matter what the circumstances, so you always have to negate. The second argument is a term based on the Kant card, but first of all, this is linked to the formula of universal law, which I never justify. Coast Guard's interpretation of deontology is entirely different than Kant's interpretation, because Kant was talking about the ability to will maxims across all people around the world, while Coast Guard's interpretation is just an absolute respect for rational. For the ability to determine your own ends. It has to do with autonomy, not willing maxims universally. But second of all, I would say that it's never universalizable to kill anyone, to use any sort of coercion at all, because then you'd be simultaneously willing that you get to achieve your ends to protect yourself, while at the same time willing that they don't get to protect their ends to protect themselves. If like they could kill you and you could kill them, then that's obviously a contradiction. So, you negate off the NC. Now, let's go quickly to the top of the affirmative case before we go to counterclaim. Extend that the affirmative has a categorical burden to prove the entirety of the resolution true. This is because to affirm means to uphold, and also because there are no linguistic caveats in the resolution. The implication of this is that he needs to prove the resolution categorically 100% true. Then you can send the implication that he's not actually affirming the resolution because he's only talking about LGBT victims, not victims as a whole. This is going to preclude all the debate coming out of the counterclaim analysis and the AC. So he's just going to cross-apply solvency definitions coming out of the AC, with all that evidence is still reliant on LGBT rights, and he's not proving all victims. You can extend text to counterclaim. The government will make it punishable for mandated reporters, such as doctors through your signs of domestic abuse, and governments will enforce restraining orders by forcing victims and the abusers wear ankle monitors. Okay, so first on before we get to the cards. Well, the first response to the solvency deficit coming from the Vickers analysis, but first of all, like that, I already took that out because that's only coming from LGBT, so it's not, he's not proving the entire resolution true. But second of all, I'll be outweighing that coming from the net benefit section. Then the next argument is Perm saying that you can still use deadly force. No, you can't use deadly force because he himself says that you try to use other options. It's impermissible if there are other options. He drops all my four arguments as to why the counterclaim is mutually exclusive. You can extend the first argument that if using deadly force is only is permissible as a last resort, the existence of alternative makes it prohibited, and the second argument that deadly force cannot be used in conjunction with the counterclaim because of a restraining order. You can't actually kill the person, and the third argument that ankle bracelets are mandatory reporting can't be used because if the abuser is dead, then there's no longer any abuse to report, nor is there anyone to put a bracelet on. You obviously cannot use the counterclaim in conjunction with affirming the resolution. Then he says that it's using a last resort, but I already extended my, I already preempted that with my first reason why the counterclaim is exclusive. His next argument is that he's talking about a fairness argument. He has no impact to fairness as to why that matters in the round or why you should vote me down. At worst, it would just be a reason to drop the arguments that rectifies the unfairness of me not knowing the rule beforehand. But second of all, I'll say that it's fair as far as I'm not actually kicking it. So then, like, we just have the counterclaim there. Like, I'm still advocating the counterclaim. Then he says a bunch of cards. Okay. The first problem with the cards, they're not actually specific to my evidence. You can extend the solvency evidence, which is the Howey evidence, that empirically in Colorado, patients were aware of mandatory reporting laws when to fix the problems, and you can also extend the Sachs analysis that reporting laws increase detection and documentation. Right? This is going to solve that for all the legal avenues problems, because this evidence is from areas where it wasn't mandatory for people to report it. Then you can extend the Forson evidence in New York that the probation officer in Brooklyn using bracelets, monitors always solved that 100% because we always knew where they were, so we could enforce the restraining order. Then you can extend the net benefits evidence, which completely drops the Brennan analysis, which says that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that people have due process. This is going to outweigh the impact coming to AC in terms of intuition. One, on magnitude, because everyone in the world agrees on it, and second, in terms of qualitatively, because the worst moral violations in the world always occur when there's a lack of institutional checks. So I outweigh.
Is that right?
The problem with his strategy early on was he tried to overadapt. I might be wrong, but I think this panel can handle everything that's going on, so he is way behind on the debate because the 2 hours conceded too many arguments. Instead, my argument that he must be accountable unconditionally. He is making appeals to fairness. I'm not making a fairness. I'm making optimal decision-making claim. My argument is that if the increase our incentive to clash, because he can just kick it after I make these arguments. There's no counter rule, no defense, no offense. On this argument's function conceded, which means you have a reason to vote on it. I'm impacting this argument a step point. Only my model debate encourages a unique skill set. It teaches players how to make the best kinds of decisions, weigh the advantage and disadvantage, taking action, be someone only my model promotes a portable skill that debaters will evaluate to lead that to often decision making is crucial. Becoming a good lawyer, persuading others that you are in the right side of your shape for your jobs, knowing what are the merits and disadvantages part of your actions. See step point. The thesis of the Iraq War was grounded in flawed advocacy skills and decision making. So the reason why so many people, the reason why Bush does not have to defend his policy from the people on the far left and the far right is the reason why massive atrocities occur. The only way to prevent that is to encourage a better model debate. Functionally conceded argument, no impact to only loss of center of mass debaters want to win voting so documents ignoring unfair arguments not counting structure disadvantage. Now, I'm also being way ahead on the counterclaim debate because he's conceding my argument that his text of the argument is that all governments in the world clearly that's impossible because his counterclaim does not solve whatsoever. None of his evidence about the entire world means the counterclaim does not solve. Also, now go to the NC. He's conceding my McMahon evidence, which I'm comparing the McMahon intuitions argument, the affirmative case versus the NC case. He's extending no defense intuition. This is incredibly important to me that when there are no abstract moral theories that the same level of credence as a scientific theory, you should accept our intuitions. He says that his theory precludes, no, not preclude. My argument is that to say we derive practical action through reason is a meta-ethical theory that does not have a high credence. His burden was to read evidence to indicate that we have a very high credence in the ethical theory. Moral uncertainty exists, and that's being conceded. He said that there is no more uncertainty, but not true. Just because we're in debate right does not mean that everything's 100% true. We should accept the pluralistic theory about it. There are so many ethical theories, contractarian and contrasted with virtue of this. Since he is not really evidence that all of those are false, there's more uncertainty, which means my McMahon evidence always come forward. That he's not really evidence, it's just a really high credence. You can send the way that's been conceded that moral epistemology can never be 100% common. Any ethical claim we make, armchair philosophy can always go wrong. The fact that pure disagreement, the fact that you and I disagree over ethical theories is the reason why our intuitions don't have the same level of credence as any specific ethical theory. That is the best. I'm only doing weighing on this question between his theory and mine, so you default to the AC. Now go to the affirmative case. No arguments was extended on the affirmative case. It was functionally conceded conceded in the 2-NR extent. These stand the practical use self-defense that for one is never the victim of less than perfect knowledge of the situation. The only question is what do we do when the attacker is attacking? What does the victim do? If he's conceding my urge and morality must guide deliberation, it is the only question. What does the victim do in that situation? The only way to do that is going to be using a self-defense, namely through deliberate force, extended conceded evidence and contention, the Vicar evidence that there's institutionalized homophobia, no legal avenues, police can't tell the abusers or there's sodomy, laws criminalizing homosexual activity, the court system of justice would be the only option as far as to use victims to use deliberate deadly force.